Hey everyone, Reaper here again with another video. The topic of this video is, have you ever purchased something or sought out something, for the purposes of this video, comic books, you purposely went out to get because other people were getting them, or you maybe felt that you might miss out on getting these books, for whatever reason. I have a couple here that I wanted to talk about that relate to me. But that's the topic of this video. Now, I don't recall too many times collecting whatever it was, whether it was a video game, whether it was comic books or whatever. I don't recall too many times in my collecting life buying things because other people were buying them, or other people said you need to buy these. There are a few times, but not many. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about this book here. Now, what is this one? This is Batman 412. I don't even know the number. This is a book that I've had in my collection for a while. It was one of those books that when I was collecting Batman books, when I came back to the hobby, when I started collecting Batman, I found in a dollar bin at my local comic book store. I was like, oh, well, you know, this one looks pretty cool. It's got a pretty cool looking character on the cover. I get it. It's $1. No big deal. My comic book store has a, you know, something if you buy a certain amount of dollar books, you get for the price of this or the price of that. I forget what it was at the time. So it was one of those things that I picked up back then. Now, I don't know what's going on with the book now. This is July 2020. For those of you that watch this now or later, I'm speaking current times. I don't know what's going on with this book now, but I know a few months ago that I know on social media, on Instagram, for whatever reason, this book was blowing up. People were having great interest in it. People were trying to get it. People were showing you know, screenshots of eBay sold listings that it's $20, $25, you know, $18, whatever it was. The point is, it was no longer a dollar book for whatever reason. It was being hyped because I think Joker had a new girlfriend or whatever at the time, and they were fans, trying to link that girlfriend to this character that was introduced in this book. I think her name is Mime. You know, it's just crazy. But anyway, it goes to the point I'm trying to make. Have you ever purchased anything because other people influenced that purchase? Now, no, like I said, for me, that wasn't one of them, but this was one of the ones I've noticed. That, you know, on social media, that's where a lot of these things happen nowadays. On social media, you go on Facebook, or you go on YouTube, you know, or anywhere else on social media, and you hear about the hot books or whatever, and people think that they got to get them and all of that. They're influenced by these people that they see. Now, maybe somebody could fill me in on this book. I didn't do too much research on it. I don't really, you know, whatever. Maybe somebody could tell me if it's still hot or if it's linked to Joker's new girlfriend. What's Punchline? I think her name is, right? Punchline. I know everyone was going nuts about that too. Everyone was trying to buy multiple copies of whatever whenever she showed up. I know something Hell Arisen or whatever, Hell Arisen 3, whatever it is. But it'd be interesting to know. But I think that's a prime example of what I'm talking about. Now, let me give you an example where I was actually influenced. Unlike with that one, and I'm going to go back 20 some odd years. You remember that Spider Clone storyline that was in the mid-90s, early to mid-90s? That I think the general idea was that Spider-Man actually died. Peter Parker actually was killed in the battle with a clone that was made of him by the Jackal. And it was in this issue right here. So this one goes back to the 70s. The Jackal made a clone of Spider-Man, and they fought. And at the end, one of them was destroyed. And you see Spider-Man going back to his normal life. And in the 90s storyline, they created it where it was the clone that actually survived, but the clone believed that it was actually Spider-Man. So all this time, it wasn't the real Peter Parker. It was the clone that survived. And now Peter Parker's coming back saying that, hey, no, I actually did survive. That storyline, I think, was incredibly unpopular. It pretty much just shit on all of the things that Spider-Man did after he fought the clone. Facing the Hobgoblin, facing Venom, getting married, doing all these other things that the real Peter Parker had nothing to do with. It was the clone all along. So you can understand why some people, people get offended by things today. Some people were getting, offended, angry, upset with that storyline back then, and I was one of them, and still am. I think it was a stupid idea. But you may disagree, and that's fine. We could agree to disagree. But anyway, the point of this is, because of that storyline, this book shot up from I think it was maybe a $20 book back then. A nice grade. My copy's like a 7.5 or 7.0. It says 7.5. Where a copy like this was going up to $150, $200. It just went crazy. And, we didn't have social media back then in 94, 95, whenever I got this. I think it was 95, whatever, early 95. I think. We didn't have social media, but we had Wizard Magazine that would hype it up, talking about how this is an important book because of the storyline and all that stuff. So that was our social media. And that's what caused this book. And I think a lot of people went going through those long boxes at shows and comic book stores, picking this book out and buying it. And then the dealers, the owners of the stores caught on and made this a wall book. And I remember I paid a decent amount for this. And it was all for nothing. It turned out that, the storyline became a dud. And, people talk about, oh, this is going to be the most valuable issue in a long time in the Spider-Man run. This is going to rival, the Hobgoblin. It's going to rival Venom. It might even rival the Punisher and all that stuff. And, of course, it never did. It was all hype. The storyline, like I was saying a few moments ago, bombed because the fans just did not like it, and rightfully so. It was really a stupid story, I think, at least, and many others, I think, thought. But I fell victim to that. I was like, oh, I got to get this because everyone else is saying it's going to be good. Everyone else is getting it. I didn't even have any idea what it was. I just heard of it then, and I said, oh, let me go get it. So that was one example of where I actually, and I can remember from way back when, where I fell into that trap. Now I have two more here, another one where I fell into that trap and another one that I didn't fall into that trap that a lot of people I've noticed were going crazy for. I'll do that one first. Amazing Spider-Man 212, the first appearance of the Hydro Man. This is another book. When I came back to the hobby, I've always known of the Hydro Man. And I was like, oh, let me get this. And I went to one of New Jersey's famous comic book stores. I got this copy. It's a nice copy. It's probably like an 8.5, no big deal. A low, high-grade copy. I think I paid like $10 for it, and that was the end of it. I was like, oh, I never had the first appearance of the Hydro Man. Let me add him to my collection. And I did. Then a few years later, about, what was it? Was it a year ago this time? Spider-Man Far From Home came out. And in the months leading up to that, when, we found out Mysterio was the main bad guy, but there was also hints that there might be other bad guys in it, Spider-Man villains. And the water, it turned out to be the elementals. But some people were theorizing that some of those early shots of the movie where Spider-Man seemed to be fighting some sort of water creature, that it was the Hydro Man. And remember, there was the sand creature. People thought it was the Sandman. And all these other things. And people started going crazy for that book. That book became a $50 book very quickly. It might even went up to $75. I know even my local comic book shop put that on the wall. This would normally be in his bins for like $10. But it went up on the wall. And I think some people were going crazy for the hype, thinking that the Hydro Man was in Far From Home. And as I said, wasn't the case. It was the elementals. And then everyone started shifting their attention to supernatural thrillers, whatever issue that was. I don't remember. And people were paying big money for that. Well, not big money. I don't think people were throwing hundreds of dollars at it, but people were paying more than what that book was for many, many years. Again, that was probably like another $10 book, $20 very, very high grade, and then it became, I think, like a $75 book, just like that. How much is that book now? Probably not $75. And here's the last one for this video. Here's another example where I felt victim. I fell victim, and this is recently. Well, when I say recently is when I came back to the hobby, maybe a couple years after I came back to the hobby. Do you remember this? Scooby-Doo team-up, was it 12? Where Harley Quinn showed up in it, Poison Ivy. I remember when this came out, everyone was going crazy for it. I mean, I know everyone is generalization. Not everyone was going crazy for it, but a lot of people on social media, Facebook, were asking for this. This was a hot book. This became a wall book. It became a $20 wall book, even though it had come out maybe a month or two earlier at $2.99. People were paying in excess of $20 for the book. And I was one of those people. I was like, oh, well, you know, it's a hot book. I see it. Maybe I should pick it up. And it's not too expensive. It's not a $50 book. It's not a $75 book. I forget, did I pay $15 or $20? I paid more than $2.99 for it. But I paid around that I think I paid around that much. But anyway, I fell into that thinking that, you know, hey, maybe I should pick this up. And as it turned out, you know, nowadays, how much does this thing go for? $10 shipped, high grade. It didn't turn out to be the big deal that some people were making it out to be. And I don't even know what the big deal was, that Harley Quinn was in a Scooby-Doo book or whatever. It wasn't a first appearance or anything like that. It's just, I guess, people, Harley Quinn, this was right around the time the Suicide Squad was going to be, not coming out, but people were talking about it was going to come out like another year or two. And Harley Quinn was very popular. Batman Adventures 12 was going up, and all Harley books were going up, and here we have another book with Harley Quinn. So it followed that. And I think a lot of people were buying it because it was Harley Quinn. And I bought it because of, you know, some of those reasons as well. So what about you? Were there any books that you bought because you were influenced by other people, other things like Instagram, magazines, other forms of social media, and so forth? I'd be interested in knowing. Thank you for watching. Take care.